a spilled glass of red wine, a cruel, echoing laugh. When a wealthy customer demanded the scarred waitress be hidden away to spare her appetite, Harper thought her life had officially hit rock bottom. She never expected the quiet man in the corner booth to stand up and change her life forever. The morning mirror was never Harper Jenkins's friend. Every day began with the same agonizing ritual, the heavy, thick foundation, the setting powder, the careful blending that never truly worked. The scar covered the entire left side of her jaw, crawling down her neck and disappearing beneath the collar of her uniform. It was an angry, textured map of raised keloid tissue, a permanent souvenir from a house fire 20 years ago, when she was just 6 years old. She had dragged her baby sister Lily from the blazing nursery, leaving her own face pressed against a burning support beam in the process. Harper didn't regret it. Lily was a healthy, vibrant college student now studying physical therapy. But the world didn't see the heroism. The world only saw the damage. At 26, Harper was exhausted. She worked double shifts at the Brass Fig, an upscale, trendy bistro in downtown Seattle, where the clientele wore designer clothes and expected flawless aesthetics. The restaurant's polished mahogany floors, dim amber lighting, and expensive floral arrangements created an atmosphere of exclusive perfection. Harper, with her scarred face, was the glaring imperfection. She pushed through the swinging kitchen doors, tying her black apron around her waist. The chaotic symphony of clanking pans and shouting line cooks immediately enveloped her. "Jenkins, you're on Section 4 today." Gideon Fletcher, the floor manager, snapped without looking up from his clipboard. Gideon was a sharply dressed, hyper-anxious man who treated the restaurant's Yelp rating like a holy text. He had never liked Harper. He tolerated her only because she was the most efficient, tireless worker he had, willing to take the grueling weekend closing shifts no one else wanted. "Section 4, Harper asked, a knot forming in her stomach. "But that's right by the kitchen doors. The draft is terrible, and the tables are tiny. I usually work the window booths." Gideon finally looked at her, his eyes doing what everyone's eyes did, darting to the left side of her face before snapping back to her eyes widened with a flash of discomfort. "We have a VIP reservation coming in for the window booths. Evelyn Crawford and her associates. I need my most presentable staff up front. Just take Section 4, Harper. Don't make this a thing." Harper swallowed the bitter taste of humiliation. Most presentable. It was the polite corporate way of calling her ugly. She nodded silently, grabbing a stack of polished silverware. She needed the tips too badly to argue. Lily's tuition was due in a month, and the landlord had just raised the rent on their cramped 2-bedroom apartment. The lunch rush hit like a tidal wave. For 2 hours, Harper moved like a machine, balancing heavy trays of roasted duck and truffled risotto, refilling water glasses and plastering a polite, professional smile on her face. She ignored the lingering stares from the tables. She ignored the way a mother pulled her child a little closer as she walked by. She had spent a lifetime building an armor of emotional detachment. Around 1 o'clock, the atmosphere in the restaurant shifted. A hush rippled through the front dining room as Evelyn Crawford swept in, followed by 3 heavily perfumed friends. Evelyn was the wife of a prominent local real estate mogul. She wore a tailored cream-colored pantsuit, a heavy diamond tennis bracelet catching the ambient light, and an expression of perpetual disdain. Evelyn's reserved window booth wasn't ready. A couple was still lingering over their espresso. Gideon, sweating profusely, rushed to intercept the wealthy socialite. "Mrs. Crawford, so sorry for the slight delay. If you wouldn't mind taking a seat at table 12 just for a moment, I will personally clear the window booth for you." Table 12 was in Harper's section. As Evelyn and her entourage sat down, Harper took a deep breath, grabbed a pitcher of iced water, and approached the table. "Good afternoon, ladies. Welcome to the Brass Fig. Can I start you off with some sparkling water, or perhaps a cocktail while you wait?" Evelyn turned to answer, but the words died in her throat. She recoiled physically, pressing herself back into the leather booth. Her gaze locked onto Harper's neck and jaw. The disgust on her face was so raw, so unfiltered, that it felt like a physical blow to Harper's chest. Oh my God! Evelyn gasped, her hand flying to her chest. She looked at her friends, who were staring at Harper with equal parts shock and morbid curiosity. "What happened to your face?" "It's a burned scar, ma'am," Harper said evenly, holding the heavy water pitcher steady, despite the sudden tremor in her hands. "Can I get you ladies something to drink?" I can't look at that," Evelyn said, her voice rising in panic. She waved a perfectly manicured hand at Harper, as if shooing away a stray dog. "It's completely unsanitary. Are you sure you don't have an infection? This is a high-end restaurant, not a freak show." "Evelyn, shh," one of her friends whispered, though she kept her eyes glued to Harper's skin. "I won't be shushed. I pay hundreds of dollars for a meal here, and I expect an appetizing environment," Evelyn snapped. She raised her voice, snapping her fingers sharply in the air. Manager, get over here right now." Gideon sprinted over his face, pale. "Is there a problem, Mrs. Crawford?" "Yes, there is a problem," Evelyn sneered, pointing a sharp acrylic nail directly at Harper. "I come here to relax, Gideon, not to lose my appetite. Get her away from our table. In fact, get her out of my sight completely. It's revolting." Harper stood frozen. The ambient noise of the restaurant seemed to fade away, leaving only the ringing in her ears and the burning flush of shame creeping up her unscarred cheek. She waited for Gideon to say something, anything to defend her. She was a human being. She was an employee who had never missed a shift in 3 years. Instead, Gideon turned to Harper, his jaw tight. "Harper, put the pitcher down. Go to the kitchen. Now." "Gideon, Harper's voice broke. "Now, Harper," he hissed. "You're upsetting the guests." Harper placed the cold pitcher on the table, the glass clinking loudly against the wood. She turned and walked away, her spine rigid, feeling the eyes of half the restaurant boring into her back. Once she pushed through the kitchen doors, she ducked into the dry storage pantry, hiding behind towering racks of canned tomatoes and flour sacks. In the dim light of the pantry, Harper pressed her face into her hands. A single hot tear escaped, tracking down her scarred cheek, stinging the sensitive tissue. She hated herself for crying. She hated Evelyn Crawford. But most of all, she hated the suffocating reality that hard work and a good heart meant nothing in a world obsessed with a flawless surface. Harper spent the next 30 minutes in the back, mechanically rolling silverware into cloth napkins. Her hands moved in a blur, but her mind was trapped in the dining room, replaying Evelyn's cruel words over and over. Every time the kitchen doors swung open, she heard snippets of laughter and clinking glasses. She felt like an exile in her own workplace. Suddenly the pantry door swung open. Gideon stood there looking frantic and irritated. "Jenkins, we are drowning out there. 2 waiters just got triple-seated, and the patio is packed. I need you back on the floor." Harper looked up, her eyes slightly red. "You told me to stay out of sight." "I told you to stay away from the window booths," Gideon corrected sharply. "Just work the back corners. Don't go near Mrs. Crawford. Table 14 just sat down. Single diner. Go get his drink order, and for God's sake, keep your head down." Harper wiped her hands on her apron, took a deep breath to steady her erratic heartbeat, and pushed back out into the dining room. Table 14 was tucked into the darkest corner of the restaurant, shielded by a large potted ficus. A man sat there alone. He looked to be in his late 30s, dressed in a sharp-tailored navy suit without a tie. He wasn't looking at his phone or reading a menu. Instead, he was quietly observing the room, his dark eyes sharp and analytical. He exuded an aura of calm, quiet authority that made him stand out amidst the chaotic lunch rush. Harper approached, keeping the right side of her face, turned toward him, as much as possible, an old, exhausting habit. "Good afternoon, sir. Welcome to the Brass Fig. My name is Harper. Can I get you something to drink?" The man turned to look at her. Harper braced herself for the inevitable flinch, the widening of the eyes, the rapid shift in demeanor. But it never came. He looked directly at her, taking in her eyes the severe burned scar on her jaw, and back to her eyes, without a single flicker of pity or revulsion. His expression remained warm and perfectly level. "I'll just have a black coffee, please, Harper, and a glass of tap water," he said. His voice was deep, smooth, and incredibly polite. "Right away, sir. Do you need a few minutes with the menu? I think I already know what I want, the grilled salmon medium with a side of asparagus." He offered a small, genuine smile. "It's a busy afternoon for you." "We're managing," Harper said softly, a tight, grateful knot forming in her chest. It had been a long time since a stranger had looked at her simply as a person. "I'll have your drinks right out." As Harper walked toward the beverage station, she inevitably had to pass near the center aisle. Unfortunately, Evelyn Crawford had finished her meal and was heading toward the restrooms, her entourage trailing behind her. Harper hugged the edge of the aisle, holding a tray with the man's coffee and a pitcher of water, pressing herself against a pillar to let Evelyn pass. But Evelyn wasn't paying attention. She was looking over her shoulder, laughing loudly at something her friend had said. As she turned back around, Evelyn stepped directly into Harper's path. Harper tried to pivot, but the heavy tray shifted. Evelyn's expensive Chanel handbag swung outward, colliding hard with the edge of Harper's tray. Gravity took over. The tray tilted aggressively. Harper lunged to stabilize it, but the ceramic coffee cup slid over the edge, shattering against the hardwood floor and splashing dark, scalding liquid directly onto Evelyn's cream-colored pantsuit. A piercing shriek echoed through the dining room. The entire restaurant plunged into absolute silence. The clinking of silverware stopped. Every head turned toward the center aisle. "My suit," Evelyn screamed, looking down at the dark, blooming stain on her designer trousers. "Are you blind, you stupid girl? This is bespoke silk." "I am so sorry, ma'am, you stepped right into my path," Harper stammered, dropping to her knees immediately with a cloth napkin, desperately trying to dab at the spilled coffee on the floor. "Don't you dare touch me!" Evelyn shrieked, kicking the napkin away from Harper's hand. She loomed over Harper, her face twisted in absolute fury. "You did this on purpose. You've been glaring at me ever since I told the manager to get your hideous face away from my table. No, I swear it was an accident." "Shut up," Evelyn spat. "You are a clumsy, disgusting freak. I don't even know why they let someone who looks like a monster serve food to normal people." "What is going on here?" Gideon came sprinting out of the kitchen, his face flushed red with panic. He looked at the shattered cup, the stained pantsuit, and Harper kneeling on the floor. "Your little monster just ruined a $4,000 suit," Evelyn yelled, pointing a trembling finger at Gideon. "I want her fired. Right now. If she isn't fired by the time I walk out those doors, my husband will ensure this restaurant's reputation is buried. We will ruin you." Gideon didn't even hesitate. He didn't ask what happened. He didn't look at the angle of the spill or listen to Harper's side of the story. He just looked at the wealthiest woman in the room and nodded furiously. "Mrs. Crawford, I am so deeply sorry," Gideon groveled. He turned to Harper, his eyes cold and devoid of any empathy. "Harper, you're done. Go to the back, pack your things, and don't come back. You're fired." Harper froze on her knees among the shards of broken ceramic. The words hit her like a physical blow. Fired. How was she going to pay rent? How was she going to look Lily in the eye and tell her the tuition money was gone? The sheer injustice of it all crashed down on her. The tears she had fought so hard to hold back finally spilled over, trailing down her scarred skin. She lowered her head, staring at the floor, too broken to fight back. "Excuse me." The voice wasn't a shout, but it carried an undeniable, booming authority that cut through the tense silence of the dining room like a razor. Footsteps approached slowly, deliberately. Harper looked up through her tears. It was the man from table 14. Nathaniel. He stepped between Harper and Evelyn, his tall frame completely blocking the socialite from looming over the kneeling waitress. He looked down at Harper and gently extended his hand. "Stand up, Harper," he said softly. Harper hesitated, then took his hand. His grip was firm and reassuring as he pulled her to her feet. Evelyn glared at the stranger. "Who the hell do you think you are? Stay out of this. This girl just assaulted me." Nathaniel turned to Evelyn. The warm, polite demeanor he had shown Harper was entirely gone. His dark eyes were like chips of ice. He looked Evelyn up and down with an expression of profound disgust that mirrored the one she had given Harper earlier. "I saw the entire thing, Evelyn." Nathaniel said, his voice dangerously low. "You weren't looking where you were going. You bumped into her. And now you are abusing a hard-working woman to cover up your own profound lack of grace." Evelyn gasped, her face flushing crimson. "How do you know my name? I demand to know who you are. Gideon, throw this man out." Gideon stepped forward, trying to assert his authority. "Sir, I'm going to have to ask you to return to your seat or leave the premises. This is an internal staff matter." "It is an internal matter, Gideon." Nathaniel interrupted smoothly. "Which is precisely why I am handling it." Nathaniel reached into the inside pocket of his tailored suit jacket and pulled out a sleek black leather card holder. He extracted a matte black business card and handed it, not to Evelyn, but to Gideon. Gideon took the card. He looked at it, and the blood instantly drained from his face. He looked from the card to the man, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Evelyn sneered. "Well, who is he? Some middle management nobody." Nathaniel didn't look at Evelyn. He kept his eyes locked on the sweating manager. "Go ahead, Gideon. Read it aloud for Mrs. Crawford." Gideon swallowed hard, his hands shaking visibly. He is Nathaniel Brooks, the CEO and founder of Brooks Vanguard Holdings." A collective gasp rippled through the nearby tables. Evelyn's jaw dropped, her arrogant posture completely collapsing. Brooks Vanguard Holdings wasn't just a corporate entity. They were the primary investment group that owned the Brass Fig and a dozen other luxury restaurants across the Pacific Northwest. More importantly, to Evelyn, Nathaniel Brooks was the primary venture capitalist funding her husband's latest desperate commercial real estate development. Her husband had spent the last 6 months begging for a meeting with him. "Mr. Brooks." Evelyn stammered, her voice suddenly trembling. I had no idea. You must understand she ruined my suit, and I understand perfectly, Mrs. Crawford." Nathaniel cut her off, his voice echoing in the dead, silent room. "I understand that you believe your bank account affords you the right to treat human beings like dirt beneath your shoes. I understand that you look at a woman who wears a badge of extraordinary survival and see only a target for your own miserable insecurities." He took a step closer to Evelyn, and she instinctively shrank back. "You will leave this establishment immediately," Nathaniel commanded. "You are permanently banned from this restaurant and every other property my company owns. Furthermore, I will be having a very detailed conversation with your husband this afternoon regarding his pending funding." I prefer not to do business with families who lack basic human decency. Evelyn burst into tears, turning on her heel and practically running for the exit, her friends scurrying after her like frightened mice. Nathaniel slowly turned his attention to Gideon, who looked like he was about to faint. "Mr. Brooks, Gideon stammered, sweat pouring down his forehead. "I was just trying to keep the customer happy. You know how it is in hospitality." "I know," Nathaniel said quietly. "The true hospitality requires a spine, and it requires leadership. You displayed neither today. You didn't just fail to protect your employee, you actively participated in her degradation." Nathaniel straightened his suit jacket. "Pack your office, Gideon. You're fired." Gideon's jaw slacked. The clipboard slipped from his sweaty fingers, clattering loudly onto the hardwood floor. He opened his mouth to protest, to offer some pathetic excuse, but one hard, unforgiving look from Nathaniel Brooks silenced him completely. Without another word, Gideon turned and practically sprinted toward the back office, his career at the Brass Fig officially over. The dining room remained locked in a stunned, breathless silence. Nathaniel slowly turned his attention back to Harper, his imposing, icy corporate demeanor softening instantly. "Are you all right, Harper?" he asked, his voice returning to that smooth, grounding cadence. Harper was still trembling, staring at the shattered ceramic at her feet. I don't know. I've never seen anything like that. Why did you do that? You didn't have to step in." "I had every obligation to step in," Nathaniel replied gently, steering her away from the spilled coffee and signaling for a busboy to clean the mess. "A business is only as good as the people who run it, and watching a dedicated employee be abused for something completely out of her control is entirely unacceptable." He guided her toward a quiet, velvet-lined booth near the back of the restaurant, far from the prying eyes of the lingering lunch crowd. "Sit," he insisted softly. Harper slid into the booth, her mind racing. "Mr. Brooks, I appreciate what you did, but I really need this job. My sister Lily, she's a physical therapy student at the University of Washington. Her tuition is due in 3 weeks. Without my tips, we are going to lose our apartment." Nathaniel leaned back, studying her face. He didn't avoid the scar. He looked at it with a profound, quiet respect. "You won't lose your apartment, Harper. In fact, I have a proposition for you." He pulled a sleek silver pen from his pocket and tapped it thoughtfully against the mahogany table. "I didn't just come here today for the salmon. I've been conducting unannounced audits of my properties all month. The Brass Fig has been bleeding excellent staff for a year. Gideon's turnover rate was atrocious. Now I know why." Harper nodded slowly. "He managed through fear. He cared more about aesthetics than the actual service." "Exactly," Nathaniel said, leaning forward, resting his forearms on the table. "But every time I looked at the shift logs, your name was there. Double shifts, weekends, holidays. You know this restaurant better than anyone. You know the inventory, the regulars, the flow of the kitchen. I don't want to hire an arrogant outsider to replace Gideon. I want someone who understands what it feels like to be on the floor. I want you to take over as general manager." Harper choked on a breath. "Me, but look at me. This is a high-end establishment. You saw what just happened with Mrs. Crawford. People want a certain image." "I don't give a damn about a superficial image," Nathaniel said fiercely. "I care about character. I care about resilience. You think I don't know what that scar means?" Harper frowned, her brow furrowing in confusion. "What do you mean?" Nathaniel sighed, the sharp edges of his billionaire persona fading into something deeply vulnerable. 20 years ago, there was a devastating house fire in the Ballard district. A 6-year-old girl dragged her infant sister out of a collapsing, burning nursery. It made the front page of the Seattle Times. Harper's heart pounded against her ribs. How do you know about that? Because the brave firefighter who pulled you both from the porch before the roof collapsed was my older brother, Jonathan. Nathaniel revealed his voice, thick with uncharacteristic emotion. He brought the newspaper clipping home. He kept it pinned to his fridge until the day he passed away. He always said that little girl was the bravest person he ever met in his entire career. When I acquired this restaurant group and saw your employee file the background check, flagged the address and date of your injuries, I knew exactly who you were, Harper. Tears pricked Harper's eyes. For 20 years she had carried the physical trauma of that night, believing the world only saw her as a damaged tragedy. To hear that someone had viewed her as a hero, that a firefighter had kept her story as a badge of honor, shattered the heavy invisible walls she had built around her heart. I don't know what to say, Harper whispered, hastily wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Say you'll take the job. Nathaniel smiled. A starting salary of $120,000 a year, full health benefits, and a schedule that actually allows you to see your sister. Harper didn't hesitate this time. She reached across the table and shook his hand firmly. I won't let you down, Mr. Brooks. Call me Nathaniel. The shift in power. True leadership is not about maintaining a flawless surface. It is about recognizing the raw, unfiltered value beneath it. Over the next 6 months, the brass fig underwent a massive, beautiful transformation. Harper completely stripped away the toxic, hypercritical environment Gideon had fostered. She promoted the hardest-working line cooks, instituted fair scheduling, and completely redesigned the guest experience. Staff morale skyrocketed, and with it, the restaurant's profits soared to record highs. The wealthy elite clientele continued to dine there, but they quickly learned that rudeness to the staff would result in an immediate permanent ban. Harper thrived. With her new salary, she paid off Lily's tuition entirely and moved them into a spacious, light-filled townhouse in Queen Anne. But more importantly, the suffocating shame that had dictated her life slowly evaporated. She stopped turning her face away when she spoke to people. Nathaniel became a frequent fixture at the restaurant, transitioning from a distant boss to a close, trusted mentor. He introduced Harper to Dr. Gregory Harrison, the esteemed chief of reconstructive surgery at Harborview Medical Center. It wasn't to hide the scar Harper had finally made peace with it, but to medically release the tight, painful keloid bands that restricted her neck movement. The surgery was a massive success, funded entirely by a generous corporate health package Nathaniel had personally approved. But the universe, with its poetic sense of justice, was not entirely finished weaving its intricate web of karma. It was a rainy Tuesday evening, exactly 1 year after the infamous coffee spill. Harper was standing tall at the host stand, reviewing the evening's reservation list, when the heavy oak doors swung open. A woman walked in, soaking wet, her cheap umbrella dripping onto the polished mahogany floor. She looked exhausted, wearing a poorly fitting raincoat and sensible, heavily scuffed shoes. Harper looked up, her breath catching abruptly in her throat. It was Evelyn Crawford. The arrogant, diamond-draped socialite from a year ago was entirely gone. Her face was pale, devoid of the expensive makeup she used to wear, and her shoulders were slumped in heavy defeat. Nathaniel had kept his word. He had ruthlessly pulled Brooks Vanguard Holdings out of Harrison Crawford's commercial real estate venture. The sudden withdrawal caused a massive domino effect. Other cautious investors panicked and immediately backed out. Within 8 months, Harrison's empire crumbled under a mountain of insurmountable debt, forcing them into a brutal, highly publicized bankruptcy. Evelyn approached the host stand, shivering violently, her eyes glued to the floor. "Excuse me. I saw the sign in the window. The one that says you're hiring for evening dishwashers." Harper stood frozen. The sheer magnitude of the reversal was dizzying. She could easily turn Evelyn away. She could enact a petty, deeply satisfying revenge, laughing her out of the restaurant, just as Evelyn had tried to laugh her out of a job. The painful memory of Evelyn screaming freak and monster echoed faintly in the back of Harper's mind. Evelyn finally looked up. When she saw Harper standing there, in a tailored, immaculate general manager's suit, the remaining color drained completely from her face. Evelyn stumbled backward, her shaking hand flying to her mouth. "Harper, I didn't know you were—" Evelyn stammered, her voice trembling with absolute, crushing humiliation. She turned toward the heavy doors, preparing to flee back into the cold rain. "I'm sorry. I'll go." "Evelyn, wait." The voice was firm, but lacking the cruel bite that Evelyn had used a year prior. Harper stepped out from behind the mahogany stand. She looked at the shivering woman, seeing not a monster, but a broken, desperate person who had lost everything. Harper walked over and gently handed Evelyn a warm, dry towel from the coat check counter. "The dishwasher position was filled this morning," Harper said evenly, watching Evelyn's eyes fill with absolute despair. "But our coat check attendant just moved to Portland. It pays $20 an hour, plus a percentage of the tips. You'll need non-slip shoes and a black button-down." Evelyn stared at Harper, heavy tears streaming down her face, mixing with the cold rainwater. "Why? Why are you helping me after what I did to you?" Harper offered a small, genuine smile, the visible scar on her jaw a proud, undeniable testament to her survival. "Because, Evelyn, unlike some people, I don't look at someone in pain and try to make it worse." The restaurant buzzed warmly behind them, a beautiful symphony of laughter, clinking glasses, and genuine hospitality. Harper Jenkins had walked through the fire twice in her life. The first time she saved her sister. The second time she saved herself. And in doing so, she had built a life so magnificent, so deeply rooted in grace, that absolutely no amount of cruelty could ever burn it down again. Harper's extraordinary journey proves that your deepest scars can become your greatest strengths when met with grace and resilience. Never let the cruelty of others define your worth. If this story of justice, second chances, and undeniable karma moved you, please hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs a reminder of their inner strength, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring real-life drama stories every week.